I haven't done just like a sit down chatty like recommendation video in a while, so this is kind of fun. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Maddie. If you're new here, I hope your day is going well. And today we're going to do a classic, basic video where I recommend books based on books you didn't like. I've done this video on my channel once ago, long ago. I privated it, I'm pretty sure, because it's been a minute. But I thought we would make another dollar off of BookTok and specifically recommend books that BookTok has made popular, even though they were probably popular before. Specifically, if you didn't like these books, you should read these other books that are not super fucking popular because of BookTok. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and fucking jump into this, because once again, we are trying to edit and upload on the same day because I post every Sunday. Right? Yeah, totally. On into it. I didn't know if I wanted to do this like as a TikTok series or if I just wanted to make a YouTube video about it. And obviously, since we're on YouTube right now and you're watching this, you can clearly see that I just made a YouTube video. Considering the fact that the series that I'm going to recommend off of, I read because of YouTube and had owned the book for many years before even getting to it because of BookTube, I think it's fitting that we start here. That series is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Now, I know people are already mad. This is a BookTube initial era darling. It's personally not good. I only read the first book. A lot of my friends have really liked this series. I'm sure that there is growth off of this first installment, but I don't want to read more in this series for a myriad of reasons, some to do with the book itself and some to do with the author. It rhymes with Schmayanism, if you get my drift. But if you haven't read Red Rising, it is about a world where people are categorized in a class based on blood colors, and it follows a main protagonist into a Hunger Games-esque escapade, so to speak, for a basically vengeance path. His wife gets fridged early on in the story, and from then on there doesn't seem to be really any character work for women, and it never really made me interested in the rest of the series, as you can probably tell. The book series that I would recommend based off disliking Red Rising, or honestly if you liked it, to be honest, is the Ending World Trilogy by Sarah L. Rafi. There are several similarities between The Final Strife and Red Rising, specifically along the lines of the framework of a blood color caste system, where I do feel like Red Rising popularized that concept. I feel like Sarah L. Rafi did a better job of actually showcasing the way that caste systems would have their own culture. The Ending Fire trilogy so far only has 2 books, but I just feel like, and the last one's coming out in like a month, I'm so excited, but it just feels like it does a lot of the things that Red Rising had better. There are war games that are political in this series, and there is characters that are on paths of vengeance, and I just find that the dynamics between these characters are more realized. The background is far more interesting. The world building has so much more structure and vastly more just dynamicism, which sounds like a lot of word soup, but I don't want to spoil you for anything about this series. It just feels like the characters in this series struggle far more than I remember Darrow struggling in Red Rising. Now, albeit it has been nearly a decade since I read the first book in that series, where this series, it feels like the characters actually have challenges. For example, the main character that this book follows for most of it is Sila, and she has a pretty crippling addiction to jojoba seeds in this story. It very much deters her from being able to do the things that she wants to do and hinders a lot of what she's going against, and the things that she needs to be able to achieve seems already insurmountable, and then adding that layer to her character is just such a interesting way of blending real life issues in a very already complex magical world building. Does that make sense? I'm bad at recommending books. I don't know if you guys know this about me, but this is one of the things that I am just not actually very good at. I'm great at like discussing things that I don't like, but I have a trouble. Just read the books that I like. I should probably just write scripts more for these. That would be Jumping quickly off of that, let's go to a more recent book talk, darling, that I do have a video for on my channel. I'm washed out, aren't I? Holy shit. Apologies for the lighting fluctuation. I am doing what I can. For some reason, I take 2 weeks off of filming and then all of a sudden I can't fucking do this anymore. All right, the next book we're gonna fucking talk about is Butcher and Blackbeard. Bird. More recent book talk, darling, this is. I have a video about it on the channel. I disliked it wholeheartedly. I thought it was gross and badly written, but a book that I think that you would like if you happen to want the concept of basically sexy serial killers is The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torre. This series was really big when I first started BookTube, like the first year or so in. This follows a woman who has irresistible urges to kill people, so she locks herself away in a apartment and doesn't leave for like 3 years and pays for all of her lifestyle by being a cam girl. So yeah, the reason why I think this book just hits all of the notes that Butcher and Blackbeard was Blackbeard. I can't not say Blackbeard. I don't know why. The reason why I think this is better than Butcher is just that it has a more consistent writing style and actually has a point to make about the dark topics that it's actually navigating. Whereas Butcher and Blackbeard just doesn't have that. A lot of what Butcher and Blackbeard is doing is just trying to kind of house gore within the same space as smut, whereas The Girl in 6E is about very much resisting dark urges because you have a intense belief that you will hurt someone, and that is a very interesting thing to navigate when you are also navigating within this book and the rest of the series very interesting types of kinks. This is the first book that I've ever read where it actually goes into depth on specific kink dynamics, and I found that fascinating. This was something that I did not think that this book needed to do. It didn't need to break those things down, but it was clear that this author did a lot of research, whereas the author of Butcher and Blackbeard did not do any research from what I could tell, including having a sex scene go on for like 15 pages where the main character's collarbone is fucking broken. Like literally every hole is used in that book and the girl's collarbone is broken. No. Fuck you. The stakes of this series just feels more tangible, more real. And I also know that the author of this series ended it at 3 books because of how hard it is to write this character's perspective. Whereas it's very clear to me that the series of Butcher and Blackbeard is just going to be serial killing as a set dressing, which feels very weird. I don't know about you, it just does. But that is why you should read The Girl in 6E. It's pretty fucking good, and I started rereading some of it just so that I could make sure that I actually believe that recommendation, and I still think it holds up. Also, there is romance in this. Don't get mad at me because there isn't any romance or whatever. There's romance. It's better than anything I read in that other book. Moving on. If you read a Colleen Hoover book anytime recently in the last couple of years because of book talk, I could recommend a EOB from your health insurance explaining therapy. Stop reading this woman's work. Moving on. And that is not a joke at the expense of people who don't have health insurance and think that reading Colleen Hoover will somehow make them better. Stop reading Colleen Hoover. End of discussion. The next recommendation is funny because I own the book that I'm recommending off of, but I don't own the book that I'm recommending to for a myriad of reasons. But we'll start with the book that I'm recommending off of, which is From Blood and Ash. If you've been on the channel a minute, you know that I've read several of these books, and I stopped pretty much when everybody was like, oh, these are bad? They've been bad since book 1. I'm sorry. I'm gonna be real with you guys. This was never good, and I don't understand why people liked it to begin with, but that's just me. That's just me. End of discussion. If you are unaware, From Blood and Ash is a new adult romantasy, for lack of a better term, and it follows a woman who was known to be this spiritual leader, and she had to stay veiled, and then she ends up meeting a guy who immediately kisses her without consent. It's very graphic, and then there is also vampires, which, bear in mind, that is the amount of world building I can honestly give you, and I've read several of these books and made reviews on them. I don't know if I have this review still up because I didn't like the color grading. For some reason it came out very green. But this book in particular was one where I just realized that we were going down in quality of writing when this became insanely popular. But the book series that I would recommend if you want what this series is promising, which I personally think is like vampire polycool, is Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Chipeko. Now I do have to say, I recommend this series with a grain of salt because I 3-starred the first book thinking initially that it was going to be like a 5-star read within like the first couple of chapters, because there's something with this series that I feel really lacks, and it has to do with the fact that the world building and the character development clash. This is something that I find to be kind of fascinating with this series because the first book had some really interesting world building, it had some really interesting tension, and then it all kind of gets sidetracked for the polycule dynamic. And I totally love me some poly representation in media, and I think that this series does a good job with it, but a lot of, especially the sequel, is not good when it comes to balancing those two things. It's not as bad as this, but it's not great. But moving past that little disclaimer, Silver Under Nightfall is about a vampire hunter who is basically caught up in the thrall of a very sexy vampire couple. And there's a lot of like political like movings and things happening in that series that I really liked, and I did find the tension, especially between the couple and the main character, very interesting. And as I said, some of that really takes a forefront in the sequel and kind of makes the world building lackluster. And I'm really hoping that maybe the ending of that series could really like resolve that issue, though I have my doubts. I actually think it might be over. I think it might be a duology. Let me find out for a second. 1 second. You know what? These like little videos that aren't necessarily rant reviews are just gonna get like me kind of just joshing about a bit. So if you're cool with that, let me know down below in the comments. Why haven't we gotten an update for Goodreads, Bezos? Like, come on. I know that I should move to Storygraph and Goodreads is like the devil, but like, I've been using it for like over a decade at this point. So, annoyed. Okay, wait, hold up. I wanted the sequel. So from what I can glean from the information on Goodreads is that Silver Under Nightfall followed by Court of Wanderers is a duology, but as Emma from Emma Skies reports, she's gonna recommend Silver Under Nightfall as a standalone, which I would recommend as well. I enjoyed Silver Under Nightfall with an extensive disclaimer that it has tension. And if you want to read about, you know, them getting the nasty on, you can read the sequel. It's fine. I don't think that's like anything. If you wanted what this promises, the Silver Under Nightfall does a way better job than this, because like halfway through the sequel of this book, I went, there's vampires? Excuse me? I'm confused. Whereas Silver Under Nightfall does a far better job of actually indicating that there are vampires in the series because he's dating several of them. So, just saying. I haven't done just like a sit down chatty like recommendation video in a while, so this is kind of fun. Doing a recommendation off of another book that I still have in my possession, which irritates me, we have The Night and Its Moon. Honest to God, you could literally read anything else and have a better time than reading this series. It fucking sucks ass. And I've still been trying to write like the rest of my review for this series because I've read book 3 and 4 and they're just absolutely god awful. But I can't, my emotions when talking about this author are not great. So we'll just put this down and I'll talk about a series that I think you might like if you actually want what this was promising in some ways. Not all the ways, but this was basically like a bisexual fantasy, except the main characters never actually feel like they actually get together in all 4 books. But a book series that has that strong female bond, about a friendship that is just so fucking intense that people will go miles and miles across fantastical countryside for, is Truth Witch by Susan Dennard. I am having an allergic reaction to the dust on these books right now. we're good. This series I haven't talked about in a minute. I have no idea if it even finished, to be honest, because they were coming out so slowly. I read this probably my first year of booktube. It is such an interesting magic system. It has such cool characters, especially this first installment. Take this with a grain of salt. I haven't read this since this came out, so it's been a minute, but what I will say about the characters in this book is that Safi and Isolde, did I just get that right? Yeah, I did. Safi and Isolde have stayed with me for so long because their friendship is so powerful. Safi is a truth witch. She can tell when people are lying, and Isolde has the ability to see threads between people. And I'm not going to go really into depth what that means, but it's just such a cool way to bond these characters together, and the way that they fight to get back to each other is just so good. I don't know if this series is finished. Let me just find out while you're here, you know? We're just hanging out. We're just talking about books. Let's see what's going on with this series. I haven't read the other Susan Denner books that have come out because I've been just like impatiently. I didn't mark this as read. I didn't mark this as read. There is Truth Witch, Wind Witch, Sight Witch, which I think I read and didn't like and didn't keep. Blood Witch, Witch Shadow, which I also read and didn't buy. I think I got it from the library because I was like, I don't know when these book series are going to end. I don't know if we're going to have new covers. We'll see. And then it looks like book 5 is Witch Light. And that is not out yet. Does it have a release date? Oh, expected April 29 of 2025. Okay. Interesting. Hopefully it actually wraps everything up, because I will say Witch Shadow was really weird, because Witch Shadow was like kind of the 2 last books in the series split. And when that happens, I feel like it's because there is a extensive problem going on with maybe the conclusion of the series. Looking at you, George R. R. Martin, and also Tamsin Muir. Where is my Electo? I'm getting a little bit impatient. Moving right along, but as I was saying, the Truth Witch series just does a better job of that whole bond thing, and there's queer characters in the series. Isolde and Safi are not together, but so neither are Knox and Piper. Sorry, I will stand by the fact that Piper can only write self-insert characters, and whereas I don't really know either Susan or Piper personally, I can honestly attest as a reviewer, these books are better. Read these, and then hopefully the ending of the trilogy or the series will be good. And pretty much this is probably the same amount of pages as Night and Its Moon, and with 5 books instead of 4, and they're better written. They have like an actual editing team, because it was published by Tor. Just saying, might be a better use of your time. Oh my god, I've been talking for 30 minutes. Let's keep going. All right, moving on to a hot topic, and more of a disclaimer with this one. If you didn't like Fourth Wing, you are in good company. Fucking hated this series. But if you kind of like the whole magical school element of Fourth Wing, I got a recommendation for you. Once again, this is not a series that I would say I would recommend to just about everybody. It has some flaws and some stipulations, but that is the Sholom Man series by Naomi Novik. This series, similar to Fourth Wing, follows a girl in a school for some kind of magical thing, and she has something about her that is not necessarily a disability in Galadriel sense for Sholom Man's, but does cause her to have some hindrances upon, being the thing that she wants to be initially. Let me talk about the Sholom Mans, because obviously you know what I'm talking about with Fourth Wing. It's a dragon riding school. That's it. And it's war propaganda. We've already discussed that on the channel. Sholom Mans, on the other hand, is a story about a woman who is going to a school, and it is in a world where there are creatures that try to eat people with magic. They try to devour the magic. She happens to be the most gifted, pretty much sorcerer of her time, but in a bad way. Like, she has evil magic that can really fuck up some people. But because in this world there has to be a balance. There is also a guy in her class who has the ability to basically defeat a bunch of these monsters really, 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 really well, and he saves her. And she's not happy about this. She is not happy about it. She doesn't like owing people shit. And I'm just saying, this rivalry, this dichotomy between Galadriel and Orion is just so good, so interesting. It's just so much better than insert fetishized Southeast Asian man number 62 into whatever romantasy you've got going on. This series, I will say, has a very intense writing style, so if you're not really into that, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But I will also mention that Naomi Novik was criticized for a line that referenced like bugs or something inside someone's locks, kind of implying that locks are dirty. And she immediately took that shit out when she was criticized for it, whereas Rebecca Yarros appropriated an entire language and doubled down on it. So that's my personal feelings on those. Let's keep going. The last recommendation I have is a little loose, so we'll just add it because why not? If you didn't like One Dark Window, you should read Little Thieves. Because I liked Little Thieves. I liked One Dark Window, don't get me wrong. I just thought it was kind of for what it was trying to do, and Little Thieves is a lot better, so you should read it. You got to the end of the video, put like a thumbs up emoji or something in the comments. I'm gonna go now, guys. Like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Bye!